Welcome to Twin Whistles. I'm your host, Joe Chapp, and today we're going to be talking about Jalen Carter and the situation that is happening with Jalen Carter and the character assassination that I think is totally wrong. Now, I know Jalen Carter, the football player, an amazing player at Georgia, a national championship winner at Georgia, a great defensive tackle against the run and pass. He's a great player, but I don't know Jalen Carter the person. And I don't claim to know Jalen Carter the person. And I'm not going to make any false narratives of fact in this video. I just won't. I think when you're talking about Jalen Carter, you got to talk about two things. One, obviously, what he went through was an emotional experience, okay? Like when you go through a situation where your teammate, your staffer that was on the Georgia Bulldogs staff, passes away in a tragic incident, I don't think that you would be the same. And I don't think you would be focusing solely on football, especially when you have a legal issue at hand. When people talk about his pro day and how he wasn't focused and obviously he doesn't care about football, that's a total character assassination. Okay? When you're going through a legal process like that, no matter if it's how small it is, it could really impact your life. It could really impact the way you do things. You obviously things can get out of hand. You late nights with the lawyer, it could really wreck some things. And we're not even looking at the mental health side of it. Obviously, seeing a teammate die, seeing a staffer die, I can't imagine the mental toll that would be on Jalen Carter. I just can't. So I'm gonna look past his pro day, what happened at the combine, because I think he had bigger issues to fry. And here's where I stand, okay? Should the Detroit Lions draft Jalen Carter or should they not? And I don't have an opinion either way. My opinion is this. Brett Holmes and Dan Campbell have shown that they can draft guys who have red flags in their history. Amon-Ra St. Brown, he's a great player. Obviously, a outstanding wide receiver. Love St. Brown. He fought with teammates in practice. That could be considered a red flag. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, who they just signed, he swung on a teammate at practice or something like that. That could be considered a red flag. James Houston, who the Lions drafted last year, he was in trouble for credit card fraud at Florida. And the Detroit Lions and Brett Holmes and Dan Campbell, they did their homework on the guy and they made sure they made the right decision on, did he learn? What did he learn from it? And how can we help him moving forward? And I think that's the most important thing. And my whole thing is, it's not really my opinion because I don't really know what's going to happen in that interview. Dan Campbell and Brett Holmes are great. They're great men at judging character. We have seen it throughout their whole GM and coaching, years. They've made decisions for the betterment of the team. They've got players on this roster who have clicked in the right puzzle pieces at the right time. So whatever Brett Holmes and Dan Campbell decide about Jalen Carter, I can't speak to it because I can't speak to the facts of the matter. I can't speak to the facts of what's happening inside Jalen Carter's mind. Was he really dedicated to football at that time? Because let's be honest, like I said, when you're going through a legal issue, I think the last thing you're thinking about is football. I don't think you're thinking about football like that. It's a very tough situation. You've seen a teammate die. You've seen a staffer who you might have been close with die. It's not like this was a one-time incident that didn't have any, you didn't have any emotional toll to. So I would be privy to wonder that, and I'm sure that Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes will ask that question. But in the terms of the Lions, like Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes have earned the trust to make a risky pick. Let's be honest, the picks that they have made in the 2 years that they've been general manager and coach, they obviously agree on the picks and they want to go with it. They made good picks. They didn't pick anything that was out of the ordinary. They didn't pick anyone that was just a total risk. They did their they did their due diligence, and they made the right pick. With James Houston, they probably asked him in the draft interviews, like, how did you learn from it? What'd you do about it? And what are you going to do about it moving forward? And they obviously liked the answer because they drafted him. See, I'm not along the lines of if the Lions draft Jalen Carter, he's another Nick Fairley. It's a character assassination. I don't believe in that. I think that what Jalen Carter showed at Georgia is that he's a really good football player and he works his ass off because you don't become a defensive tackle like that not working hard enough. Like, let's just be honest. Like, when you're one of the SEC's best defensive tackles, it doesn't just come natural. You know, you're not just a big bodied individual and go, yeah, I'm going to dominate the SEC. Like how? Like how? I think it's important for Lions fans to face the facts, okay? Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell have done an immense job in the 2 years, going on 3 years that they've been here, with the two drafts that they've had. I will not say that them drafting Jalen Carter is a bad decision or them not taking Jalen Carter is a bad decision. It's really about the interview. And I think that Detroit has put a good enough culture around where they can put Jalen Carter in a better situation than this would probably be a great situation for Jalen Carter. Especially with the fact that they might be bringing in a guy like Calais Campbell. That could be huge for a guy like Jalen Carter. You know, Michael Brockers, as much as he didn't perform to what he was paid to do, he was a pretty good guy in the locker room. And what Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell have done is they've shown that, you know, they want this. They want guys that match their identity. And Brad Holmes has said it, you know, yesterday he said it, and it was an interesting comment because, let's be honest, he's a guy who he doesn't talk much, but when he does, it makes sense. He said this earlier yesterday. He said these kids are young college kids, and I've read a lot of things about just from the brain standpoint, where your frontal lobes are developed at that point. Some of the things I did in college, I probably wouldn't want anyone knowing about, said Holmes. Again, you just have to take it case by case. You kind of ask what it is. Is it the one thing? And I say the football character is probably the biggest thing. Just in terms of your passion for the game, your mental toughness, your leadership, your accountability, your work ethic, all that stuff that remains number one. And I think that's where we're going to end it. I don't think that Jalen Carter is off the Lions board by any means. I think that Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes are going to do their due diligence, and they're going to make the right pick. They've earned the trust of me to just trust what they do. They've earned the trust of you guys because of the drafts that they've had. And I'm not going to question them on if they take Jalen Carter, I'll be happy. If they don't take Jalen Carter, I'll probably be happy. Unless they draft a quarterback. That's besides the point. That'll be another topic for another day. But I'm not going to sit here and talk about the character assassinations that are happening with Jalen Carter. All I can say is, if I was in that situation, I would probably be the same way. And I don't know about you, but I just feel like at some point real life takes over and your job really doesn't matter. And that could be a question that Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes asked Jalen Carter at the draft interview. So it'll be very interesting to see what comes from it. Obviously, we're talking about drafting a guy who he's immensely talented, and he has a lot of talent. What would you do though? Would you draft Jalen Carter? Let me know in the comments, and I'll respond to each one of you. Obviously, I love getting the comments, and we'll talk about it in the next video of Detroit Lions News Podcast on Between the Whistles, Detroit.